Status. People don't like this word. People think it's a dirty word. We've talked about it before on the show multiple times. If you say to someone, oh yeah, the reason why you want to become a CEO of a business is because you want to increase your status. Or the reason why you play the guitar is because you want to increase your status. Or the reason why you do any sort of a display is because you want to increase your status. People will say, no, I don't do it for status. I don't do it for status. I do it for the love of the activity. I don't do it for status. I don't want to do anything like that. I'm not a status seeker. People will get very defensive. People will want to convince you that they never do anything for status. Because status is a dirty word. It's a word that makes it sound as if you're very self-indulgent. You're thinking about how you can make yourself look wonderful in the eyes of other people. And people don't like to give off that impression. Certainly here in Ireland, people are very touchy around the word status. And people are super touchy about the idea of someone thinking that they are doing something to increase their status. But you see, folks, before there was money, before there was modern day banking, and all of this, before there was gold, the biggest currency that existed in a human tribe was status. That was the biggest currency that anybody could increase. It's the biggest thing. It was the most important thing for ancestral humans who lived in a tribe, in a village of 30 or 40 people. The currency of that time was not dollars, not pounds, not euro, not gold, not any of that. It was status. An easy argument could be made that that was the most important currency for our ancestors. Status. Why? Why is status so important? Status is so important because from an ancestral perspective, if you have more status in the village or in the tribe, then that means the people who live in your tribe deem you as more valuable. And the more valuable you are, the more insurance you have when you're in the tribe. If it's a competition between you and someone else, if you have more status than somebody else in your tribe, and it comes down to saving your life or somebody else's life, and a decision has to be made, whose life are we going to save? The person who has the most status, in other words, the person who offers the most value and potential value to the tribe going into the future, that is the person whose life will be saved. Because the more status you have, that means the more value you offer. And the more value you offer, the more insurance you have in the tribe. And if you have more insurance, that means your probability of surviving in the harsh environment of nature increases significantly. And if you are surviving longer than your competitors, that means you have an increased probability of passing on your genes to the next generation. The biological purpose of life. That is why status is so important. And I know you and I live in the modern environment, and it's easy to forget our ancestral roots, but you have the same psychology as your ancestors. Your psychology developed back in the Stone Age, back in an ancestral environment. And so for you, in the modern environment, status is just as important to you as it was to your ancestors. And anybody that tries to convince you that they don't care about status, they are lying. They are trying to come across as falsely humble. In other words, they're full of shit. Anyone who tries to convince you that they don't care about status is a liar and a bullshitter. And they are trying to deceive you for some reason. Every human being is extremely attentive to their status gain and their status loss, and their current level of status that they hold within their own friendship circles, the status that they hold with their romantic partner or partners, the status that they hold with their business people, with the people that they are trading with, the status that they hold with their family. People are very aware of how much status they have within their own group, whether that's romantically, in terms of friendship, in terms of trade and business, or in terms of family. Status is extremely important. And back in our ancestral environment, it was arguably the most important currency that any ancestral human had. Now, I understand in the modern age we have all of this extraordinary wealth. We have money, we have gold, we have Bitcoin, we have properties, we have all of this. Stocks. All of these things that we would throw in under the umbrella of wealth. If you have lots of dollars, pounds, or euro, if you have lots of properties, if you have lots of gold, if you have lots of valuable stock, if you have lots of Bitcoin or crypto that's valuable, you have what we call wealth. But back in a time when none of those things existed, the quote wealth, or the currency of our ancestors, was status. And it's exactly the same now. Why do you think people acquire wealth, folks? Why do you think people want lots of money, want lots of properties, want Bitcoin, want crypto, want all of this wealth? Why do you think people want to be wealthy? Sure, it makes your existence better. But why does it make your existence better? Because if you are observed through the eyes of other people as having a lot of resources, a lot of wealth, people translate that into you being a high status individual. If you are someone who has an extraordinary means for acquiring and defending resources, and you have a lot of wealth, that in the equation of life equals a high status individual. And what happens when someone is perceived as being high status? They are perceived as having more value to offer to the world. And what happens when you are perceived as having more value to offer to the world? You have more insurance. There are more people around you that are interested in you continuing to live because you have a lot of value to offer to them. And so you not being here is of importance to them. Now, I know you might say, oh, well, some people might want to kill other people who are wealthy so they can inherit their wealth. Yes, I understand that. That's a different motivation. We can talk about that another time. But the point is, when you are wealthy, you are perceived as higher status than someone who is not as wealthy. And when you are high status, you are determined as being a more valuable human. And when you are more valuable, more people want to associate with you. And when more people want to associate with you, by default, you have more insurance in this life. So, why am I saying all this? Why am I laying this out? Why am I laying out why status is so important? Because, to go back to our mate Alex, not Arnold. Where did Arnold come from? I'm still thinking, why did I say Arnold? Maybe it's to do with merging his first and second name. Alex Honnold. Arnold. Sorry, Alex. So anyway, here we have Alex, this solo rock climber who doesn't use safety gear, who doesn't use a harness. He just scales these skyscrapers. It's very daring. It's very risky. Why does Alex do this? Why does anybody do anything risky or daring? Let me tell you why, and let's cut through the crap here. Because people are going to give a whole bunch of bogus reasons as to why Alex did this. Oh, he just loves the activity of climbing. That's why he did it. He's passionate about rock climbing. I wonder why he's passionate about it. Let's go a step further. So for those people who try to make the argument, he only did it because he's passionate about it. He loves climbing, he loves rock climbing, he loves climbing skyscrapers. Okay, why is he passionate about it? Well, he's passionate because he's good at it. Okay, so he's good at something which makes him passionate. Why do you think he wants to do this? Why do you think he decided that my life is going to be about scaling skyscrapers and really high structures without safety gear? Status. That is the answer. Because, let me tell you something interesting, folks. How much status does somebody get for going into an office and doing work in a little cubicle in the office, tapping their fingers off a keyboard? How much status do you acquire on the global stage? How much status do you acquire within your community for going into a cubicle with some big conglomerate business, some big outfit, some big financial outfit, some big accounting outfit, some big legal outfit? You go into a cubicle and you type on your laptop. How much status do you get for that? How much admiration do you extract from the population for going into your cubicle and typing on your laptop? Have a think about that. And then compare it to what Alex has just done. Alex has just went out and scaled a skyscraper with no harness, with no safety gear, putting his life on the line. It has been streamed live on Netflix. Millions of people will have watched him during the stream, and millions more will watch the footage afterwards, and millions more will read about it in the newspapers, online, on social media and elsewhere. What is happening here, folks? Well, you see, when you play life safe, when you do very comfortable, non-risky activities in life, there's a trade-off. There's a trade-off with everything, folks. And there's always a cost-benefit analysis to be run on everything that you do and everything that I do. So if you go into your cubicle because you work with some legal firm or some accounting firm and you're a bean counter, and you go into your little cubicle and you type on your laptop and nobody knows who you are. You're just a bean counter with no name. You're an anonymous individual. Nobody knows you beyond your close friends, family, and work colleagues. Nobody knows who you are globally. You are insignificant in that sense. When you do something like that, let me try and explain the cost-benefit analysis of going into a cubicle for some big financial firm and being a bean counter. Here's the cost-benefit analysis. When you are a bean counter in your cubicle, it is not risky. You drive to work, you walk to work. You go into this nice air-conditioned or heated building, you sit on a comfortable chair, and you do something that isn't unique. You do something that millions of other people can also do. And so there is nothing unique about you. There's nothing interesting about your skill set. There's nothing extraordinary or marvelous about what it is that you are doing. You are doing an activity that millions, arguably billions of other people do. And therefore, there's no USP, there's no unique selling point to what it is that you are doing. Why? Because you're doing a very comfortable, safe, non-risky activity that lots of people across the planet can also do. So what's the cost-benefit analysis of doing this? Well, the benefit is you get paid You're in a very comfortable environment. You're safe. The type of work that you're doing isn't really that strenuous. It's pretty easy. It's well within your tolerance of capabilities. And so as a result, it's very comfortable. There's no major risk, and you get paid some money at the end of the day. So that's the benefit. What's the cost of being a bean counter in a cubicle for some big financial or accounting firm? Well, the cost is, because you are playing life so safe, because there is literally pretty much zero risk with your occupation, and because your occupation is carried out by millions and perhaps billions of other people, it's not really that interesting or unique. And so as a result, the cost of being a bean counter is that you don't get a lot of status for what it is that you are doing. Sure, you get comfort, you get paid, you're in a safe environment, it's predictable. So those are all benefits, we could argue. But the cost of doing this is, because you're playing it so safe, and because you're doing something that lots of other people do, it doesn't make you unique. As a result, you don't really increase your status at all. Your status just stays where it is. And in fact, in the eyes of some people, you might actually be losing status. Some people might look at you and say, fuck me, that person's a bean counter. What are they actually doing for society? They go into their little cubicle, they work for some big global financial firm that's fucking over the economy and stealing a whole bunch of money, one could argue. What are they actually doing? So you might actually lose status. Forget about just breaking even or increasing your status. You might actually lose status with certain people in the population, because people might look at your job and say, what a worthless job. What is this person doing? They just type on the keyboard. They facilitate the existence of some big financial empire of some rich dude. They're not really helping the community. They're in their cubicle, isolated. And what are they really doing? Shuffling papers around and typing on their keyboard. So an argument could actually be made that you're even losing status in the eyes of some people doing a job like that. So that's the cost benefit for being a bean counter in a cubicle for some big financial, accounting or legal firm. Now let's compare this to Alex Honnold, our freelance solo rock climber who doesn't use any safety gear or harness when he is ascending up a skyscraper. How many people do you know have climbed the 11th tallest building in the world out in Taiwan that was streamed to millions of people on Netflix? How many people do you know has an occupation as a rock climber or as a skyscraper climber who doesn't use any safety gear? Do you know many people like that in your life who engage in such a unique, risky, daring, unpredictable kind of work? How many people do you know like that? And let's now run the cost-benefit analysis from the perspective of I was about to say Arnold again, from Alex. Let's have a look and see how it compares to our bean counter in the cubicle of some big financial firm. So Alex, he climbs skyscrapers without safety gear. Let's have a look at the cost benefit. Well, the cost, folks, is pretty obvious. The cost benefit analysis. Let's have a look at the cost of what Alex is doing. He's climbing a very tall structure without safety gear. What could go wrong? Death. That's the cost of what Alex is doing, and people like Alex. The cost is the greatest cost that any of us could incur. Death, or some sort of disabling injury. That's the cost for Alex. whenever he goes to work in the morning? Death. Our bean counter who goes into the cubicle, comfortable, safe, predictable. But for Alex, it's very uncomfortable, risky, daring, dangerous, and unpredictable. There's nothing safe about it. And it's so unsafe that the probability of death or serious injury is it's incredibly higher. It's so much higher than some bean counter in a cubicle. So that's the cost of what Alex is doing. What's the benefit? Why is Alex even doing this? The big benefit that Alex gets from doing this, from climbing this skyscraper in Taiwan, this extremely high structure, the 11th highest building on the planet. What's the benefit of him scaling this structure without safety gear? If he succeeds, the benefit is he is going to accumulate an enormous amount of status globally. Because Alex isn't just going to gain status from the people who are literally there in Taiwan watching him. No, this was streamed on Netflix. Everybody around the world, the Bandido knows about this. Even if he does keep getting his name wrong, but the Bandido knows about what he did. This is a global story that transcends languages. Stories are being written in all sorts of different languages about what Alex has done. What is the end result of all of this, folks? What is the end result of doing something with such a high cost, but coming out on the other side victorious? What's the big benefit? Status. Alex Honnold's status just went from here to here. It's out of the lens of the camera over the last few days. Because on the global stage, Alex did something so unique, so interesting, so out there, so unusual, so risky, so daring, so dangerous. The cost of Alex not pulling this off was the greatest cost of all, death. And what happens, folks, when you engage in risky, daring, very costly behaviors? Well, let me explain what happens. When the cost of you doing something is very high, that means if you are able to overcome the odds and you're able to come out victorious in this activity, which has this extremely high cost for failure, lying on the other side of this is an enormous amount of status. And what did I say earlier about status, folks? This is why it's important that you understand the absolute critical nature of status in human affairs. Status. The more status you have, the more valuable you are perceived as a human. And the more valuable that you are perceived, the more insurance you have in this life. Which makes your existence all the more remarkable. And it gives you the best probability of living out the rest of your existence and passing on your genes to future offspring. That's the biological way that we could look at it, certainly through the perspective of our ancestors. But being so high in status, being an individual with so much status, means you have so much perceived value in the eyes of the rest of humanity. And when you have so much value, or when humanity perceives that you have so much value, people want to associate with you. People want your autograph. People want to be your friend, to be your business partner. You get offers. You get financial propositions. Things start to happen in life when you are high status and you have a lot of perceived value in the eyes of humanity. And that is what was lying on the other side of this for Alex Honnold.